Welcome to 2024, the year of the Bitcoin bull. On your low time preference journey to becoming a wealthier and healthier human, there's one thing besides weak hands that can get in your way: your diet. Ditch the unhealthy snacks that tempt you throughout the day and stick to your fitness goals with Farmer Bill's bison and beef sticks. Right now, you can save 20% by using code BIZBIT20. That's BIZBIT20. Don't fall prey to emotional eating and indulge in a bunch of sugar and carbs like everyone else. Farmer Bill's bison and beef sticks will give you the protein, fat, and salt your body craves to crush 2024.
I think it's important for people to understand that this is really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for humanity to get it right. It can be a solution to this problem, which really permeates absolutely every aspect of our lives, and we don't even know it. As much as it will separate money from state, most importantly, it's an opportunity, probably the only time we'll get the opportunity to separate money from human nature.
Welcome to the Business Bitcoinization Show, the show dedicated to helping you enrich your life and grow your business with Bitcoin, the hardest money on planet Earth. I'm your host, Josh Friedemann, and our guest today is Mark Link, who's the co-founder of Link Dental. For the last 35 years, he's been a dentist by day, but he's a Bitcoiner by passion. He was red-pilled by the 2008 Great Financial Crisis and orange-pilled by logic and experience. Today, we talk about his business and how he's begun to accept Bitcoin in his dental practice, as well as some other ways he's using Bitcoin. This week's Bitcoin Meetup Spotlight is actually the one that he leads. But before we get into that, I do want to take a second to thank those who have been supporting the show on Fountain across the last week. Thanks to No Waste BTC Signs and user 399-53486 for streaming sats to the podcast, as well as Piez, who in reference to last week's episode with Daniel Hirschberger of Bitcoin is Better, he said, "Thank you, sir," and sent 205 sats. Well, Piez, thank you, sir. I really appreciate your support, as well as everyone else who's been supporting the show on Fountain. If you are interested in giving it a try for yourself, I encourage you to download the Fountain app, listen to this podcast and any other podcast you enjoy listening to. You can either stream sats as you listen, or if you hear something you like and want to send a message to me or any other host, you can send a boost and provide that feedback. Now, this week's Bitcoin Meetup Spotlight is the South Denver Bitcoin Meetup, the place to talk about Bitcoin in South Denver. On the second Thursday of each month, gather around to explore the peaks and valleys of the Bitcoin landscape. From seasoned miners to those just striking digital gold, all are welcome at this South Denver Bitcoin rendezvous. In their discussions, they delve into the flaws of the financial system and examine how Bitcoin might offer an alternative solution. Join them for a thoughtful dialogue on reshaping the future of finance in the digital age. One of their recent meetups was a progressive party where they went to businesses that are accepting Bitcoin in the Denver metro area. It sounds like a fun group to be a part of, and if you're interested in learning more, you can reach out to Mark, whose info is in the show notes below. Now, we're going to get to our interview with Mark right after this. Business owners, unlock the benefits Bitcoin has to offer your business with the Bitcoin for Business Quick Start Guide. This 27-page guide highlights the 6 ways you can grow your business with Bitcoin. Check it out in the show notes. Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you.
So I like to start off every single interview with a few questions that help us to get to know you a little bit better and to give us some insight for our own lives. So you ready for these?
Sure.
Question number 1, when and how did you first learn about Bitcoin?
So I would say the short answer to that is 2016. I watched a podcast by Don Tapscott on TED Talk. But I was really primed to hear what he had to say by what happened to me in 2008. And at that time, my wife and I had just purchased or bought and built out an office condo. We had borrowed $1 million. And the first day we're moving in, Hank was the same day that Hank Paulson and George W. get on the airways and saying the sky is falling. We need to bail out the banks. And for 6 months, my patients weren't doing anything. They weren't, unless it was emergent, they weren't doing anything. We did not take a paycheck for 6 months. We were furloughing people. It was just, very, very, very stressful. So I say that kind of primed me to hear the story, kind of to be open to Bitcoin, because at that juncture, I decided, you know what, I don't ever want to be in that situation again. And, when you go to bed on Friday night and you wake up on Monday and everything's hunky dory, and you wake up on Monday morning and the sky is falling, you kind of want to figure out why that is. And so I started going down the rabbit hole, and I was 45 years old at the time, and my financial knowledge was zero. I thought that when I went to a bank, that they had the money. In other words, that they were actually hardworking people who would earn this money, and so of course, they should earn interest if they're loaning me money. But what I came to understand is that that isn't the case, that they just kind of created out of thin air. And in Mike Maloney's Hidden Secrets of Money, episode number 4, was kind of my entree into how our monetary system worked. And I was just gobsmacked by when the more I peeled back the onion, the more I got to understand, wow, this is crazy. It's been kind of a journey since 2008, but 2016 was the very first time that I had actually heard about Bitcoin.
Question number 2, what's an insight or fact about Bitcoin that you wish everyone understood?
Gosh, I think there's really 3 things that I wish. First of all, I think everybody, just like I didn't know how our monetary system works. I didn't know what money is. I've come to understand. At the time, I felt like, gosh, what an idiot I am that I didn't know this. I thought I just kind of had this assumption that everybody must know. And as it turns out, and what I've found since, is that nobody knows any of this. And it's shocking to me. Even my patients who are, super financially savvy, CFAs, even some of my banker patients, are not aware that the Federal Reserve isn't part of the federal government. So I wish everybody knew number one, how our monetary system works. Okay. And that by virtue of fractional reserve lending, it is designed and structurally insolvent from day one. And it has just become more and more brittle as they've, expanded the money supply. So that's the first thing, because that is the problem. And it's what got all of us in trouble in 2008. And as we all know, the banks got bailed out, and it just created more moral hazard. And so I wish everybody knew that. And I wish it wasn't just, something that people were more interested in. And the second thing, is that as 2008 showed, what happened was that profits are privatized and losses are socialized. And that, I thought, was just accidental, but it's really by design. If you've read the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, you understand that the way our system is designed really was designed purposefully by some extraordinarily wealthy people way back in 1910. And what happened in 2008 was actually something that they had anticipated, and it just their plan worked out really great for them, So and then I think in terms of Bitcoin, I think it's important for people to understand that this is really a once in a lifetime opportunity for humanity to get it right. And, it can be a solution to this problem, which really permeates absolutely every aspect of our lives, and we don't even know it. But most importantly, I think as much as it will separate if adoption becomes more widespread, as much as it will separate money from state, most importantly, it's an opportunity, probably the only time we'll get the opportunity to separate money from human nature. And what I mean by that is, if I had a money printer in my attic, no matter how, benevolent and, say, moral I was, I would eventually use that money printer. And the beautiful thing about Bitcoin is that it extracts that frailty of human nature from this important thing that allows us to interact and lubricate commerce. And if we're lucky, more and more people will understand that, and they will utilize this system. So, but it's not a for sure thing.
Question number 3 is, what's the Bitcoin resource that you most recommend to other people?
Well, most recently, if it's a book, it would be Lynn Alden's Broken Money, or Safedin's, the Bitcoin Standard. If it's a podcast, it would be Preston Pish and, We Study Billionaires as Wednesday podcast, or What Bitcoin Did, or even I think Natalie Burnell right now is doing a great job with Coin Stories. So, I mean, those are kind of resources. And then when it comes to videos or YouTube, I almost always, if somebody's new to this space, or if somebody doesn't understand the problem, like I didn't understand the problem, I will send them a link for the Hidden Secrets of Money episode number 4. Mike Maloney does a fantastic job of just making it simple for people to understand. And then when it comes to what is Bitcoin, that very first podcast or that very first TED Talk, Don Tapscott, it's entitled, I think, something like the blockchain is changing business. But Don Tapscott TED Talk is fantastic. And then lastly, for simple things, other podcasts or other YouTubes would be Matthew Cratter's Bitcoin University. So I have a lot of resources, actually. And it just depends upon where that person is. I try to meet people where they're at, if possible, and give them what I feel like hopefully is not only just a teaser, but something that will help them start going down the rabbit hole.
So all of those are great resources. The one that I find myself recommending most, especially when I post something on YouTube, like a short or something like that, that people have some sort of critical response, I always recommend them check out Matthew Cratter's Bitcoin University, like you just said, just because he does such a good job of explaining Bitcoin, especially in comparison to everything else. But this is a podcast for business owners. I always like to ask a couple questions that aren't necessarily connected, at least directly, to Bitcoin. So question number 4 is this: beyond Bitcoin, what's a resource, idea, or tool that's been helpful to you or your dental practice recently?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, obviously it's a niche industry, dentistry. The adoption of technology. So our practice, we're using 3D printing, we're using digital impression systems and CAD/CAM to mill same-day crowns. We're using 3D printers to print our aligners for straightening patients' teeth, and to create our surgical guides for placing implants. So it's really technology, and you almost need to be a very, not necessarily the first adopter of technology, but you need to, in order to really combat inflation, you have to utilize the deflationary hedge that you get with technology in order to even survive. In my view, much less grow. So those have been the things that we've done. And I'm sure in everybody's industry, no matter what it is, we understand that, you have to be kind of on the cutting edge of what's happening in your industry if you want to thrive.
Now we have our final, what we call our arbitrary but insightful question. And it's this: as a general life principle, is it better to ask why or why not?
It's kind of a trick question, I think, and I probably is a little too binary. I'm assuming you're alluding to RFK's famous quote that some men look at the way things are and say why, and I dream and ask why not, or something of that effect. And for me, I would have to say that both questions are very important. The why question really gives you context, and as we even in the space of Bitcoin, if you don't understand monetary history, if you don't understand what's going on and where you're at, it's very difficult to chart a course that's different. So I think both questions are equally important. So I know that's a little bit of a hedge, but I think once you understand the context of where you are and understand what it is about where you are that you're not satisfied with, then you get to dream. Once you dream, then you got to take some action. You gotta be an engine for the world that you want to see. I mean, Jeff Booth is very, very strong on that. He'll basically say, we got to stop complaining about the way things are, and we got to start building. We got to start building the world that we want. And actually, that resonates with me a lot. It's one of the reasons why we started accepting Bitcoin.
Meet Linkster, your premier Bitcoin-focused advisor. Linkster caters to businesses, institutions, family offices, and high-net-worth individuals. They merge your unique financial goals and needs with Linkster's Bitcoin expertise to craft your own sustainable plan to preserve and grow the value of your hard-earned profits and retained earnings. At Linkster, it's not just advice, it's tailored execution. Connect directly with the founder by visiting linkster.com. That's LYNCSTER.com. Linkster. Secure your future with Bitcoin. Today's episode of Business Bitcoinization is proudly brought to you by Velis Commerce, where the future of business technology meets Bitcoin. As we journey through the era of Bitcoin and its transformational impact on businesses, there's one name that stands out: Velis Commerce. Whether you're looking to build a cutting-edge website, a seamless mobile app, or custom software, Velis is your go-to team. They've been diving deep into the world of Bitcoin since 2014, making them one of the most experienced groups for integrating Bitcoin and Lightning payments into a variety of digital platforms. But here's what truly sets them apart. Velis Commerce doesn't just build. They bring a wealth of knowledge to ensure your project's success from day one. Their team understands the nuances of Bitcoin, ensuring that your business stays ahead of the curve. And for all business Bitcoinization listeners out there, Velis Commerce is offering a free consultation to kickstart your project the right way. So if you're ready to future-proof your business in the coming age of hyper-Bitcoinization, head over to veliscommerce.com or reach out on Twitter at veliscommerce. Let's make sure your business thrives in the Bitcoin era. Well, Mark, we're here today to talk about your dental practice. I'd love to hear a little bit about how you got into dentistry. You've already shared a little bit about how you got into Bitcoin, but how long have you been running your practice? And then maybe we'll get into some of how Bitcoin is starting to fit into that more and more.
So I've been in private practice for 35 years, actually. And I initially was in practice in Illinois. I moved to Denver in 2004. And I have an adult restorative practice. It's kind of geared towards trying to really execute at a very high level and for patients who really want to seek optimal dental health. And but I got into it, in large part because I come from a family of either physicians or dentists, and my tendencies, or I'd say my strengths, are very much in science and in biology. That's always been something that's been of interest to me. But also the fact that in this profession, we are really fortunate to marry kind of the art and science of technology to really improve somebody's health, and it's great to be with people every day. I have some of the best patients, and it's just really an enjoyable life. So I love doing what I do.
So a few weeks ago, there was a post circulating on Twitter that someone had just paid for their dentistry with Bitcoin at your practice. And
Right.
I'm doing a disservice to whoever posted that originally, because I think I saw someone repost it or something. And I
Right.
should have figured it out before this episode or this conversation today. But how long has this been happening? Is this something that really, that was the first person that had paid? And I'd just like to hear a little bit about why you decided to begin accepting Bitcoin in your practice, considering a lot of business owners say, hey, it's too volatile, whatever else. Why Bitcoin, and why is it something that you want to accept for your services?
Kind of the backdrop is that I believe it's the future of money. Okay. And again, hearkening back to my thoughts about being the change you want to see, and trying to create a world that we want to have, and not wanting to have a repeat of 2008. Although I think that the likelihood of that is unfortunately quite high. So there's multiple reasons why I wanted to accept it. One is to start the conversation with my patients, my clients, and to kind of in that way actually legitimatize Bitcoin. Bitcoin, there's a lot of FUD about it being for terrorists and it being for the dark web and this and that. And those of us really understand Bitcoin understand that nothing could be further from the truth. And so to have a dentist be accepting Bitcoin, I think that's more mainstream. And then, lastly, with regard to, I believe that it, like Michael Saylor's, MicroStrategy, and I believe that holding Bitcoin on your balance sheet will be good for business. And this is a way of getting Bitcoin on your balance sheet without having to pay any fees or anything to purchase it. And so it's kind of a strategy to acquire more.
And was the person who posted that, was that the first person who had paid in Bitcoin, or have you been doing this for a little bit of time?
No, actually, so I posted on the Orange Pill app that I had just received, or that I had just kind of got my platform up and running. By the way, kind of a hat tip to Parker Lewis and Will Cole for their ZapRight software. It's really very easy and intuitive. It's a piece of cake. They basically onboarded me in like 40 minutes. It was so easy. So I posted on, both Twitter and on this Orange Pill app that we were accepting Bitcoin. And literally within a half hour, I had a new patient on. This was Friday afternoon, and it was Monday morning that my first Bitcoin payment was received by a new patient who came to us specifically because we were accepting Bitcoin. But I mean, I think it's something that hopefully will take off, and I certainly would love to have more Bitcoiners come to my practice. And I would love to kind of be kind of a little bit of a messenger for change in our community and have some peer-to-peer stuff. I'm also the founder of the South Denver Bitcoin Meetup. So one of the things we're going to do in the near future is we're going to have kind of like almost like a progressive dinner where we're going to go and visit any establishment that's accepting Bitcoin, especially eateries and bars and so on, to try and support those people and to again kind of start a movement.
So for people who have listened to the Business Bitcoinization podcast for a while, they'll certainly be familiar with ZapRight. We've interviewed the founder, John McGill, a couple of times already. But then since Parker and Will joined the team, ZapRight's just exploded in growth and awareness. Could you share a little bit about ZapRight and at least your perception as a business owner? I realize that you may not have gotten too behind the scenes in setting it up. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. But in as best as you could you explain what ZapRight is and why it's a valuable tool for accepting Bitcoin in your business?
Well, basically, it's an interface that will create invoices for Bitcoin payment via either the Lightning or on-chain. Generates a QR code, and it keeps track of who it was that that your customer is, and it also keeps track of what the exchange rate was at that time. So in terms of the accounting part of it, when at the year end, when you have to, maybe if you were selling your Bitcoin, you would have to account for whatever your capital gain or loss is. It kind of keeps track of all that for you, and it's just very, very easy. And actually, I was the one who set it up in our office. And like I said, it only took 40 minutes or so. But it is not, so Zaprite is not a custodian for your Bitcoin. They basically are in the process of trying to integrate a whole bunch of different Lightning wallets and Bitcoin wallets to interface with it. Currently, the one that we're using is for our Lightning wallet is Strike, and the hardware wallet is Trezor. But the hardware wallet you could use for anything. And so it was a very easy, simple onboard. And I would encourage anybody who's thinking about it and maybe intimidated by the idea of doing it because they're like, oh, the accounting, or it's going to be a big ordeal, or my front desk isn't going to know how to do it. I mean, it is simple. It is really easy. If I can do it, anybody can do it, really.
And for business owners who are listening to this, one other thing you can do if you're not necessarily just wanting to accept Bitcoin, although that might increasingly become a way that people feel, you can also connect Stripe to Zaprite, and so people can pay in fiat, they can pay with on-chain Bitcoin or Lightning. So and also you can either create discounts for paying a certain way, or charge a premium, or charge an extra percentage, for instance, if people want to pay in fiat. So I'm curious, Mark, to understand a little bit more. You mentioned about the benefit of holding Bitcoin on your balance sheet. Is this something? I'm assuming you're going to hold whatever you've already received, but have you thought about purchasing Bitcoin for your balance sheet, or are you just going to hold whatever people pay you for your services? And also, maybe why would you hold Bitcoin if it's so volatile?
Yeah, obviously, you as a business, you have to have a little cushion, for your cash flow. And I'm not gonna jeopardize that because of the volatility. Mm-hmm. But we have a significant amount of cash that's just sitting in our bank. And what I've been doing to date is I have an account with Treasury Direct, and I've just been buying 1 month treasuries and just having them rotate. And so I'm going to take a portion of that and start purchasing Bitcoin for the practice, especially given the timing of everything that's going on right now. With the halving coming up, with the ETFs coming up, with just kind of I believe it would be a good time for us to have some of our cash actually in Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we are going to buy some. Yes.
And then this may be a question that there's not an easy answer to. I'm sort of curious, though, about how it's interesting to see how Bitcoiners change as they begin operating kind of with a different type of money. So are there any either comparisons that you can make between your dental practice and kind of the Bitcoin ethos, or ways that you or your practice have changed as you've become more and more of a Bitcoiner?
I would say, I would say that the practice itself has not changed because our mission is dentistry, right? What maybe has changed, first of all, with regard to my staff. So I have really some incredible staff, and we live in Denver, and Denver is an extraordinarily expensive city to live in. And it's a shame because my employees, some of them cannot afford even to buy a house. And this is something that I've never experienced before, but it's starting to happen where if you don't get into the, buying a house at some juncture, you're going to literally not be able to do it. Even I have two sons, they're both engineers. They make a good living, but in the cities that they live in, it's like the inflation is just outpacing their ability to buy a decent home. So for my staff, we're going to start, giving them Bitcoin instead of giving them fiat for bonuses, with the hope that it will help them hedge against this problem, where they cannot afford to live their lives here. Because obviously I have a very vested interest in them staying in the practice. They're great people. But if they can't live here, they're going to eventually have to move on. They're going to have to leave and go to some other locale where they can make ends meet. So, a lot of them already have some Bitcoin, but they hear me talking about it. They're invited to all of the meetups that we have and so on. So in our office, there is very much a heightened awareness of, number one, what the problem is, and number two, how Bitcoin is potentially the solution. So they're kind of really orange pilled to some degree. So I think that would be what's changed, and there's they really appreciate the fact that I care about their well-being, their financial well-being, above and beyond just a paycheck. Yeah, so that's what I would say the biggest change.
So I was going to ask you, as you first started answering the question and kind of brought up how you wanted to pay bonuses in Bitcoin, I was going to ask if that's something that they wanted, if they're going to opt into it or not. But then you mentioned that they all have, or most of them at least, if not all of them, have Bitcoin already. Is that in large part because of your influence sharing with them about Bitcoin, or is it just one of those things that you're finding more and more people at least have a little bit?
No, it's because of my influence.
Okay.
It's constantly, even when the opportunity presents itself, they'll hear me talking to my patients about it. Not about Bitcoin so much, but just kind of asking them the questions about, what they're experiencing with regard to inflation, and oddly enough, I'll even, if it comes up, I'll ask patients. I said, well, Federal Reserve, is that part of the federal government? And it is shocking to me how few people know anything about money. And again, I thought it was just me, but it's everybody. Nobody knows. Nobody knows.
Well, I guess the classic dentist meme is the dentist talking, the hygienist talking, and the patient not being able to say anything. So you have a captive audience while you're working on them. So I guess there's some benefit there. I think this is probably a good place to finish up. If you have any final thoughts to share with the audience, that would be great, as well as where people can find you if they're interested in becoming a patient of yours or just keeping up with what you're doing. Maybe if you could wrap into these final thoughts, any recommendations you would have, if you have some, about how to talk to people about Bitcoin in a way that is attractive and convincing to them.
Yeah. Well, I've certainly, through trial and error, had better success and less success depending upon, but I would say the number one thing when it comes to talking to people about Bitcoin is just find out where they're at, and make sure that that they understand or are having a problem that and you recognize is really part and parcel, if not really under the real root cause is our monetary system. I start with that. I always start with what the problem is. Again, mostly because, and I don't really ever bring up Bitcoin until someone asks or says something to the effect of, well, great, but what can we do about it? Then that's an opportunity to kind of ease into that. So I really try to find out where they're at. And it also depends upon what my relationship is with them. I mean, most of my patients have a very high trust in me. And I like to think that's because I've always been an honest and fair broker, with regard to them and their mouth. And I know my patients really well. So I would say it depends upon who they are, how sophisticated I know they are with regard to money or finance. We can certainly have an opportunity to talk differently if somebody is a CFA versus somebody who's maybe a school teacher, kind of a thing. So, and then what was the second part of your question was,
where people can go to find out more about you, keep up with what you're doing, especially, obviously if there are people in the Denver area who want a dentist and they're already Bitcoiners, they're going to be coming to you now. But other places that people can kind of keep up with what you're doing, especially as it relates to how you're incorporating Bitcoin into your operation.
Right. For the practice, it's Link Dental, www.linkdentaldenver.com. And I'm not much of a social media guy, but I am starting to post a fair amount on the Orange Pill app, which is for Bitcoiners, obviously, and also a little bit on Twitter. But with regard to what I would say for everybody, if you're a Bitcoiner and you have an ability to, start the conversation, I think we all need to do it. If you're a business owner and you're having any second guessing about the difficulty of onboarding, say, yourself with a Bitcoin platform, I would definitely recommend at least giving Saprite a look. It was very easy for me. With regard to kind of a bigger picture and zooming out, I don't think that, I think there is sometimes in the Bitcoin community a little bit of an echo chamber. And we have this assumption that, this is going to happen, it's inevitable and so on. And it may be inevitable, but what's the timeline? Mm-hmm. And I think that we don't, what is going to drive the timeline, in my view, is not necessarily Bitcoin as much as the failure of the current system or the cracks in the current system. The next time, the Fed has to jump in and money gets inflated again. I think that's going to be the driver, and in the meantime, what we can do as Bitcoiners is basically start creating, as Jeff Booth says, the world we want to see. And so there's a benefit, like for me to accept Bitcoin, I'm not paying merchant services fees for that. I mean, and that's a significant amount of money year over year that I'm paying. So if I could have every one of my patients pay me in Bitcoin, even if I was going to immediately convert it into fiat or a portion of it into fiat, I would love that. It would save me thousands of dollars every year. So calls to action, I would say, if you're a business owner, give this a serious look and just actually do it. It's not hard. Secondly, be voices for like the FinCEN thing that's going on right now. Please, everybody, get out there, submit a comment to FinCEN to try and let them know that, hey, this is a big deal that they're trying to pull the wool over everybody's eyes, and we don't want that. And then with your elected officials, keep pinging them, keep sending them very, respectful, because they don't know either. They don't know. Our legislators have no understanding of our monetary system either. And so if we want to really be effective, I think, try and use the avenues that we can. And then if other establishments or other businesses that are using Bitcoin, try and patronize them. If, all things being equal, eat at the diner that accepts, Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. So that's how I'd like to leave it,
Well, Mark, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure.
All right, Josh. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, friends, it's a wrap. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Business Bitcoinization Show. If you want to reach out to either me or Mark, you can find those links down in the show notes. And next time you go to your dentist, ask them if they accept Bitcoin. If you're in the South Denver area, the answer is yes. As always, keep building, keep growing, and until next time, keep living and leading well. If you're a regular listener of the podcast, thank you. If you want to take a further step in your support for the show, you can help us grow by listening on Fountain, a value-for-value podcast app on iOS or Android. If you hear something you like that you disagree with or anything else, you can share it by sending some sats and adding a comment with your thoughts. Some of you have already done this, and I appreciate it. I'm going to begin reading your boosts on upcoming episodes, so if you have some insight or value to add, let the people know. Getting started with Fountain is easy. You can add Bitcoin to your Fountain wallet by using your fiat accounts or any Lightning wallet. And one of my favorite features is that once you're using the app, you can earn sats just by listening on Fountain. Check out the link in the show notes to get started with Fountain today.